All right, everyone, the watch list video here for Monday, March 31st. Can't believe it's the end of March already. Starting with the daily chart for SPY. I'm actually going to go out a year here just so you can kind of see. It's not that pretty, right? We did rip down through the 200-day, back up and retested it, and heading lower again. The QQQ looks the same way. All right, and so back to SPY. And 5-minute candles, you can see after the opening, we broke the opening 5-minute high, and then it was off to the races to the downside and never really bounced at all. That does not yield a lot of intraday setups. I'm all about intraday trading, as you guys know. Let me throw this up if you're new in chat. Please read that. But the gist of it is I make my money between the bells. And I'm a long bias trader basically because I hate to quote Jim Cramer, but there's always a bull market somewhere. There's always something to trade on the long side, but not a lot of setups. So really, I think the only call I made, I took a couple trades in QNTM. One, I called right there through the opening 5-minute candle. And we got a quick dollar something move, but I would argue the risk was at least 50 cents. So that's not a great trade. I was scaling out into strength above 11 there. But once I do that, once I start selling, especially on an early trade, because we know how whippy things are early, I put my stop at break even on the shares that I have left. So you could argue if I'd have kept my stop down here, I could have got another dollar or something. But once I start taking profits, I put a break even stop on the rest. So I have what I call a can't lose trade, right? Anyway, back to the daily. And let's talk about what we're watching for Monday. BLUE got a pop on Friday, but the interesting thing is you go to 5-minute candles, got its pop right at the end of the day. And actually, had I hung out, looked like it gave a nice after hours trade, but I didn't hang out. Fridays, generally, after hours are not great. But anyway, that's certainly interesting and one to watch because of that late day pop. Try to see what it did. In after hours, it ended up going out at 4:45, but it went to 5 at one point. So anyway, one of my top watches, assuming it's still gapping in the morning. GDHG. The only reason this is on watch, it's really extended, but I love the relative strength in it. Not in love with the idea, but NKTX had a big rip on Thursday. Quiet inside day on Friday, looking for a possible third day play there. Probably the best, most interesting chart for me going into Monday is ALMS. I always try to highlight my favorite. This is probably it. You had this gap up, sold off, then nice bounce, but then gave a lot of that back, and lo and behold, we're right back up, right? So over that $6 area, assuming we get an intraday setup for it, probably the most interesting one. I also like CRVO a lot. Had this crazy move, pulled back. We caught a nice bounce in it on Thursday, and then Friday holding up really well in a week tape. So those are probably my two favorites, ALMS and CRVO. RGLS had this pop on Thursday, gave almost all of it back, but again, great relative strength on Friday. MYSZ broke out of this long sideways action. So we're going to watch that one. CAR, big rip on Thursday, inside day on Friday, looking for a third day play there. DATS had this gap up and rip, and it basically round tripped by the at one point on Friday, not counting the gap though. But anyway, still I would say that had relative strength, and I'm going to keep it on bounce watch because it didn't trigger as a bounce on Friday. OUST, right back on bounce watch. It had this big breakout on earnings and has worked its way back down to the 20-day. Decent bounce play setup. And then I'm going to throw GameStop on there again. That was on bounce watch. Did not meet my entry parameters on Friday, so it just goes back on bounce watch. I think it's oversold in the short term. I know they did an offering in there, but that's it. I will see you guys in pre-market on Monday, and let's work together and build a gap play list to add to this list. All right, have a great rest of your weekend.